G'day mates, it's Donny, and last night I said that we would have a look at the Gearbox engine mount next. That's what we're doing today, so let's get stuck into it. For anyone that's been following along, the last video we took the bumper off the Smart. After I did that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a look at this gearbox mount. Looked in under here and thought, you know, this tyre guard here, or mud guard, whatever you want to call it, is in the way. Turns out though, that there's just this 10mm nut, and there is another 10mm nut which is up in here that you have to take out, and then I believe the whole thing will drop out. So going to get the old handy ratchet socket onto it and get into it, and we'll see if it comes off. Well, it turns out there's also a third nut to take off down the bottom. Still a 10mm, so I'm just going to knock that out of the way and then we'll see if we can get this off. Moment of truth, I guess. Wow. Alright, so it turns out you've got to pull the guard from inside of the back here. It's also behind the shock up the top. But now that we've pulled it off there, I think with a bit of manipulation, we should be able to successfully remove it. So that's come out all right. And yeah, that's how you get it out. And it will turn out that there is also an airbox in the way. However, we can see from the back here the mount that looks rather odd. That's what we're trying to get at. So I think the next thing we're going to need to do is pull this airbox out, but let's have a look and see. So taking a closer look here, it looks like we should be able to get a little bit closer, but I think what we're going to have to do is take the wheel off, because that'll give us a lot more room from this side to go through the shock spring. So I'm going to have to jack the car up. Looking under here, the jack point is directly where this cutout is, up here. So we'll jack the car up. Before that, we'll loosen the wheel off so we don't have to put pressure on the wheel while it's in the air. And we will chock the front wheels, because from what I've read, these things have a tendency to let go when they're in the air. So we'll make sure that that's all sorted out before we get it up on this side. It looks like the wheel nuts are 15mm. So for those that aren't familiar, these things don't actually come with a spare. So you've got to use this stuff. You don't have a tyre lever or anything that comes with it. So I'm going to get these off and then we'll move on to the next bit. Just checking out underneath the car at the moment, because we're going to want to put axle stands in, which are going to go on the left there. So I'm thinking that in front of this, I believe it's a subframe that holds the whole back end of the engine in. There's a little bit just in front of that clip. Just angle it down. We should be able to jack there pretty safely just to get the car off the ground. And then at least we should be able to get an axle stand in on this side. I was going to try and jack the car on both sides, but if you look at this bottle jack, which is the other jack that I have, it's kind of too big. So we'll try and do it one side at a time. Just looking in again, we're probably going to jack it from this point on this subframe, just because if I try and do it from the side up the top, that's where we've got to put the axle stand and there won't be enough room. So I'll try and lift this up slowly and we'll see what happens. So we're up on stands now, as you can see. Had to get a bit of wood just to support it. Did end up using that crossbar to jack from. Now, putting the front wheel chocks in, I've just used bricks. Definitely a good idea. So the reason why, and I was wondering why everyone said these have a tendency to roll away. When you're jacking them up side to side, the front wheels come off the ground because it's such a short car. So make sure you do chuck something in the front there to make sure it doesn't actually shift. So now that we've got these in, I'm gonna get this side wheel off, the passenger side wheel, and then we'll have a better look at everything. As I mentioned before, we loosen the wheel nuts on the ground. That way we can just get them off easily. So you can see I'm just turning it by hand now, rather than having to put pressure while it's up in the air. So we'll get this off and we'll have a better look. Wheels off now, as you can see. And if we go in, we can now get a better look, which is interesting because it looks like there's a half moon 3D printed piece in this. So, and it's been epoxied in. So that's another funny thing about this Chariot, I guess. On the front, we can see the actual rest of the mount now. It's an earth strap that goes between guess the engine and the chassis by the looks of that as well. So we'll need to make sure we maintain that. But now, as you can see, it looks like we can probably actually do this mount just from the side here. So we don't, as far as I can tell, I'll check the other one, but I don't think we actually need to remove the airbox, so that's a pretty good thing. We'll be able to do it from here. Looking at the new one, the last video that I did, I was holding it in the complete wrong orientation. But anyway, that's how it's meant to be orientated when it goes in the car, by the looks of things. So you can see like that, and then you've got that bracket that goes down the back. So the good news is, it looks like we've just got the 2 bolts there, and then the 3 bolts on the front. So looking at this, that's all that's going to actually come out. And then that mount should hopefully drop out of there. What we'll do, we'll get the jack under, probably the bottle jack now that the car's a little bit higher, just in the center of the engine somewhere, so that as we take this off, if it does release any support from anything, it's not actually going to drop the whole side of the engine, because obviously that's actually what's kind of holding that in place. And then we'll have a look at it. Bottle jack's in place now. Got the bit of wood to try to just distribute the weight a little bit because it's curved underneath there. And then we'll start trying to pull out all these bolts and see what happens. We're going to start with the ones that are actually on the gearbox, so 1, 2, and 3. That way, if the gearbox does shift up or down, we've got the control of the bottle jack down there to move it up and down. Then we'll take these 2 out, and hopefully then it'll just drop out, but we'll find out. These first 2, I've cracked them already. They were not that difficult, so try and get at this front one shortly as well. They are an E14, I think it is. E14 E-Torx. So 14mm E-Torx socket is what you will need to get these out. So anyway, I'll get stuck into that and we'll see if we can get these bolts out. As you can see now, the 3 front bolts are out. And as expected, this has just dropped completely away from where the threads are, which is why we've got that jack down there. So that when we go to put it back in later, we can actually kind of adjust the height of that so that we can actually line it back up with the threads. Because I believe that it's aluminium, so we can't really cross-thread anything. Won't be a good time. So anyway, next thing, we'll get these off and then we'll see if we can get it out. Gonna try and film this with one hand, because I know you're gonna wanna see it. Just trying to get the last bolt out. Can't be that far off. Here we go, it's coming. There we go. Wow, we'll have a better look at that shortly. But there you go. That's all you need to do to get the gearbox side mount out. Those 3 bolts down the bottom, the 2 bolts up the top, make sure everything's supported. So we'll have a better look at this one that we're pulling out now, and then I'll see if we can get the new one back in. Well, it looks like the old one, I can't even tell if that's by design that it has that gap there, but as you can see on the new one, we don't really have a gap anywhere. So I assume the new one will improve things. We'll get that in shortly. Maybe knock this, I'll knock that bit of 3D printed gear out and we'll see what's behind it. Okay, now that I've pulled that 3D printed part out, we can have a better look. And as you can see when I get on this angle, that you can see behind the rubber there, not a good thing. Obviously that's not how it's meant to be. The 3D printed part that's inside here actually goes through to the back side of it. You can kind of see it. I don't know if you can be able to see it in this light, but it does go through the back when obviously it's not meant to. The rubber's meant to stop that from happening. So yeah, good to know that this is the right thing to do to replace this. So be interesting to see the other ones when we get to them. One thing I did notice, we do have to actually tighten up this nut and bolt on this, because as you can see on the other one, it doesn't actually move. It's solid in there. I think the idea of that is so you can actually fit it up properly. So we'll get into doing that shortly. Always good when you find some good news. So the bolt that I was just talking about, the other side that it actually bolts into is fixed, so it's welded in. So what we should be able to do is actually get it on the car, and then we can, hopefully if we've got access to that, which I think we do because it's on the back, we can just tighten that up while it's in there. So rather than trying to tighten it and get it the right orientation while it's out here, we'll get it in, we'll bolt it up, and then we'll bolt this back part through. And then we should be done. Hopefully this angle will show this all right. Basically now, how I was saying before, we can actually get all the bolts started from this side. Just take your time, don't need to rush it. Get this one into, I'm just basically going to get them all started so we can kind of get an idea of where it is, and then we won't really have to do anything with moving the jack or anything like that. Probably going to get in the way of the view, but anyway, it's all right. Sometimes you got to. But you can see now that basically once we get those bolts started, we'll be able to finish those off, and then we can actually get this bolted back up to the frame and do that back bolt as well, get it tight, and we should be golden. So I'm just going to do that because I need 2 hands, and then show you the next parts. Quick reminder as well, don't be a dickhead like I just was. You need to put back in the earth strap, which is the bottom bolt on this side. So if you don't do that, you're going to have more time spent on this than you need to. But anyway, I'm just going to make sure that that's the way that it should be. Think like that. And up to there. And get that in, and then we'll do the rest. Just showing that we've got all the bolts test fitted in. So the reason I want to do that is I want to make sure that everything's not going to be sort of getting a lot of tension on places that it shouldn't have when we bolt everything up. So now that I know that everything's in place, earth straps back in, I'll start bolting it all back up. Just thought I'd point out as well with these, you don't want to over tighten them. So you should be able to get to a point where basically it just sort of stops. So a lot of resistance there. I am using my left hands. I will check with my right, but these bolts only go in so far. You do not want to overdo them. So once you get to this point, don't feel like you've got to jam it in there super tight. About here is where you can stop. I mean, ideally you'd have a torque wrench, but from what I've read, a lot of people can't even find the actual torque amounts for these. And yeah, it's probably pretty hard to actually get a torque wrench into there anyway. So we're just going to use this method. When you're doing the ones that go up to the chassis, it's okay to put a bit more pressure on those because as you can see, it's actually bolting into this steel frame. You're not going into this cast aluminium stuff. I think it's aluminium or some sort of alloy, but anyway, you want to make sure this is actually tight onto the frame. So not like these ones where you want to get to a point and stop. These, get them tight. Obviously not over tight, but tight. Last thing I did just notice, because I checked the old one, this bolt that's in here on the new one is 17 mil. The old one was like 15 or 14 or something. So this is kind of the last bit. We're just going to tighten this up. I think the idea of this, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that after you start driving it for a little bit, you should get a little bit more movement in that rubber, and then you can come in here with a bolt and, a spanner or a socket, and then tighten it up a little bit more as it starts to move. But I think for now, we'll just get it firm, and then, yeah, later on as we drive it around a bit more, we'll see if it moves a bit. Right, well, there you go. As you can see, all the 3 bolts are in the front. We've got the 2 bolts back into the frame, and we've tightened up this back one here. So that's it. Gearbox mount is done. So in the next video, we'll probably attack the engine side mount, so the driver's side. And then the video after that, we'll look at the dreaded center engine mount, which I'll have to get under the car to do. A little bit dangerous, but we'll try and do it as safely as possible. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe, comment, hit the like button, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.